The question is not whether AI will shape the world. It will. The question is whether you will help shape artificial intelligence. We do not know the precise contours of what this transformation will look like.
AI is rewriting production as we sit here. I know it. Deal with it. Like I said, it's a tool.
The rise of artificial intelligence is the next industrial revolution.
Today will be a strange ride, so buckle up. I want to start with Pope Leo's Encyclical that was published this week.
Artificial intelligence already touches many areas of our lives and affects decisions that shape human coexistence.
It runs some 42,000 words.
It is also dramatically changing how war is waged.
That's the size of a novella.
I feel entrusted to look upon another huge transformation with eyes of faith, with lucidity of reason, with openness to mystery, and with cries of the poor and the earth resounding in my heart.
Having been pretty busy since it came out, I'm not going to pretend I've read it all, but some passages I did read have stuck with me.
Artificial intelligence needs to be disarmed.
The encyclical is about the dangers of artificial intelligence.
The word is strong, I know, but deliberately chosen because this moment needs words capable of attracting attention, awakening consciences, and indicating paths forward for humanity.
The Pope speaks of technology as not actually neutral because it takes on the characteristics of those who devise, finance, regulate, and use it.
Decisions about technology must never be separated from conscience and responsibility.
Leo also mentioned the dangers that prior popes have warned about of turning other human beings into a resource to be used and exploited.
The person bears within him or herself a freedom, an interiority, and the vocation to love and worship that no machine can replace or block.
All this brought to mind Edward Bernays' book, Propaganda.
Edward L. Bernays, you're the father of public relations. What led you more than 60 years ago to see the need for public relations?
Which opens with a definition of the word propaganda.
I was a member of the United States Committee on Public Information in World War I.
Bernays traces it back to the 17th century and another pope, writing about how in 1622, Pope Gregory created a new office, the Sacred Congregation for the Propagation of the Faith. PropagandA.I, the propagation of the faith.
And I found that ideas were weapons and were even more effective than bullets.
Bernays used this origin story to argue that propaganda in and of itself wasn't an inherently bad thing.
Because when Woodrow Wilson said freedom of the seas, the Swiss, who had been neutral in the war, recognized that they depended on freedom of the seas and came over to our side.
And to say, as he was writing the book in 1928, that only recently had it come to be seen as a bad thing.
I decided that if people wanted to meet their goals, which always depended on the public, even in the case of a hermit who had to be fed by somebody, that it was basically important to have actions considered as carefully as words.
But the view of the missionaries that the Catholic Church sent out into the world under the auspices of that office, dedicated to propaganda.I,
Here now to comment, the devil.
has changed a lot in the centuries since Bernays wrote his book.
A spokesman for the Vatican said that this was all the devil's work. No. Look. I do plagues, okay? I do earthquakes. I do all the training for Walgreens cashiers, all right?
And his example might be more of a counter-example for most people at this point.
But I don't do no cover-up for child molesters, man. Okay? I can't wait for these priests to show up on my turf.
And honestly, there are other far more openly evil characters in the history of propaganda, particularly among the Nazis.
We literally have a special place in hell for them.
But as an extraordinarily mercenary character with less likely genocidal intent.
We changed the name of what we did from publicity direction to counsel, which I took from lawyers' advice on public relations, which really means on their relationships with the public.
Bernays probably did as much harm as any of them.
And since everything in our society depends on the consent of other people than ourselves, it obviously was a field that would help people win their social goal.
He massively boosted cigarette smoking by women through strategic stunts and ad campaigns, actively tying cigarettes to beauty in the form of keeping women thin.
And I added the word social because I was not going to do this for the Ku Klux Klan or the Birch Society or Mr. Hitler, who asked me to work with him.
He played a key role in the United Fruit Company debacle of U.S. intervention in the Americas, including the overthrow of the Guatemalan government.
Or Mr. Somoza of Central America, or Mr. Franco of Spain, because I didn't think they fulfilled a social activity.
Bernays made use of a variety of tactics, including psychological concepts from his uncle, Sigmund Freud.
Bernays explained, "A man buying a car may think he wants it for purposes of locomotion. He may really want it because it is a symbol of social position, an evidence of his success in business, or a means of pleasing his wife."
He also happens to be the father of a former writing teacher of mine. He may have done more than anyone to create the world that we live in today. A world of deceptive messaging that seeks to control other human beings.
Like I said, it's a tool. Hey, like I said, you can hear me now or you can pay me later.
What to do about this world that we live in now is a big question.
Choose a diversity of perspectives, including, let me add, and if you'd let me make this point, please.
And the Catholic Church has plenty of blood on its hands, so I don't typically look to it for moral guidance.
A trove of documents containing allegations and admissions of sexual abuse was kept locked up in what the Church calls its secret archives, with the only key in the bishop's hands.
Yeah, the Pope's Encyclical is a fascinating example of a human being in charge of an institution taking the long view and asking, what kind of world are we building, and is it a good one?
It's not a naive dream. It is a direction. It is the path that Jesus Christ opens within history. For this reason, the Church wishes, with humility and frankness, to be part of conversations on artificial intelligence.
ICE arrests and abuses are still happening.
They described filthy bathrooms, abuse of guards, inadequate medical care, said prisoners were being threatened with deportation to Ebola-stricken countries.
Trump and his allies are inflicting violence at home and on those who live in other countries, whether through quiet extinction.
I believe that the shutting down of USAID violated laws, violated court orders, violated the intent of Congress, and has resulted in untold, unnecessary death and destruction around the world, again, for the sole purpose of soothing the ego of the world's richest man.
Or open war.
Oman will behave just like everybody else, so we'll have to blow them up. They understand that.
These things have to be fought.
We're getting a new look this week at just how weak of a strongman Donald Trump is becoming.
Yet I do think it's worth it to step back and try to get a panoramic picture of where we're at, to try to see big things coming.
He's winning ever greater control over an ever-shrinking political faction.
I've talked about Trump's end approaching before, and it seems easier to imagine now with his cratering polls and the criminal disaster that he's unleashed in Iran.
That's who's running things right now. This dwindling, smaller, concentrated group of People. It's the defining political dynamic right now in the country.
We can't take it for granted.
One that can really only be broken through mass mobilization and democratic elections.
We still have to delegitimize his entire movement and work toward ending it.
Which is why threats to upend democracy will only grow more intense as Trump's faction of MAGA diehards keeps shrinking.
But we also have to be thinking about the country and the world that comes after that. I would suggest that the world currently being made is one of dehumanization, propaganda, and a lack of human agency.
Peter Pomerantsev needs no introduction.
These things all undergird a concentration camp society, so maybe it's no surprise that that's where we're at.
He's the author of 3 very, very important books. The 2014 bestseller, Nothing is True and Everything is Possible. The 2019, This is Not Propaganda, Adventures in the War Against Reality. And his most recent, How to Win an Information War, which is absolutely fascinating.
But I want to talk about how to think beyond it and not to fall into the assumption that it's normal to live in this kind of society.
The fears and the anticipation around AI tends to run ahead of the reality. If we're talking about a game changer, it was sort of the social media revolution. That was a game changer in terms of targeting, in terms of how we think about influence and audiences, and how we think about our information environment.
Bernays created or fine-tuned many of the worst aspects of the world we currently live in.
A lot of the discussion about AI is how it'll undermine the human. Actually, from where I sit, it's what it's going to tell us about the human, which is much more alarming.
For more than a century, countless U.S. outlets, many with big budgets, in opposition to the kind of stuff he was doing, scrambled to cover the news in cities, states, and counties.
This is a very old debate. I mean, Lippmann and Dewey are having this conversation at the start of the 20th century.
That they did so in blinkered or even bigoted ways, kept vital stories from the light of day.
So Lippmann said, people can't handle the truth, reality is too complicated, media takes you away from the truth, therefore we need, Peter Thiel or some sort of elite to guide us through this world.
Yet those same outlets also covered corruption and daily events, large and small, that conveyed useful information that could provide a significant service in a democracy.
Dewey's response is, you're right, people can't handle the truth, they seek unreality, but we can create communities where truth emerges. There is no absolute truth we can arrive at, but we can have an environment where we're negotiating truths and a way to research them.
We have somehow lost so much of the latter.
Please welcome this year's Mike Wallace Scholarship recipient, Santiago Campos.
While keeping the previous downside.
And while I want to thank CBS News for funding this generous gift towards my education, I want to also acknowledge how the recent direction of the outlet stains the legacy of Mike Wallace, the namesake of this scholarship.
The creation of a culture of lies and stunts.
As corporate elites take hold over the very pipes through which our information flows, journalism that serves the people becomes increasingly harder to come by, yet ever more crucial.
A flim-flam con man selling the world on hate and fear in order to make the next buck and outrun any consequences for criminal behavior.
Construction is underway for an unprecedented spectacle. A cage fight at the White House. A massive arch taller than the building itself, part of a makeshift arena for an upcoming Ultimate Fighting Championship event.
Donald Trump is a physical manifestation of Edward Bernays' work.
I have never seen anybody want anything so much as people want those tickets.
We live in an increasingly propagandist society.
A group is extraordinarily credulous and open to influence, wrote Freud. It has no critical faculty. The individual subordinates self-analysis and a discerning search for the truth in favor of maintaining group interests and cohesion.
One of the most dangerous things about propaganda is that everybody believes that it affects other people, but not them.
Each group, Bernays wrote, considers its own standards ultimate and indisputable, and tends to dismiss all contrary or different standards as indefensible.
While countless individual journalists and a few companies keep reporting in heroic ways,
some are tuned out because they just don't trust the media.
Journalism as a force for informing the general public has been shattered.
A brand new Gallup poll is showing that Americans are registering a record low trust in mass media. For the third year in a row, more adults have no trust at all. than trust it a great deal or even a fair amount.
That general public always held some inexplicable and unreal views.
The problem that we've had is with news is relevance.
But previously could at least be reached through large-scale stories and reporting tools.
People have felt that there is a divide between the interests of the news organizations and their lives.
Now, a majority of the country is unlikely to have a shared experience of news of any kind, with the exception of occasional true crime stories.
And in that space, lots of very nasty propagandists have been very effective at intervening.
Instead, the last decades of the 20th century saw a revival of propaganda.
And with the destruction of local news, that has only exacerbated.
And it saw the rise of people that echoed some from Bernays' era. People like Father Coughlin.
New York turns out 18,000 strong for a glimpse of Detroit's famous radio orator, Father Charles E. Coughlin,
who understood just as well as Bernays did how to use propaganda.
Regardless of whether they agree with his views or not, they're here to see one of the outstanding figures in the public spotlight today.
Coughlin once counted nearly a quarter of the American public among his audience.
Here is a typical utterance.
He spread anti-Semitic and Nazi ideology widely in the U.S.
Remember that you're an American first.
And only the beginning of World War II led to authorities canceling his program and ending his influence. As I've said before, propaganda tends to go hand in hand with a concentration camp society because propaganda always sets itself against something and uses it to fearmonger.
One of the stories that I'm literally just finishing writing is about an evangelical preacher in Arizona called Father Caleb Campbell.
A thing can never be promoted on its own virtues when you're talking about propaganda.
His whole thing is bringing people out of Christian nationalism into his form of evangelicism.
It has to be recast as better than something else or as an antidote to some threat.
He was actually a neo-Nazi in his youth, and he came out of that, became a preacher, and now, he sees a lot of parallels between the sort of suburban fascism of his youth and Christian nationalism today. That's his comparison, not mine.
Propaganda tries to shut down critical thought.
His methodology is very, very interesting. It actually reflects what Hannah Arendt wrote about fascism and many other things, but very simply, his mission is to make the mind safe for reality, or to make the world safe for reality.
And foster groupthink that demonizes someone or something else.
Essentially, he finds that the people he talks to are drawn to Christian nationalism, and the way he was drawn to some far-right movements was because it offers a total world, a totality.
Concentration camp societies can't exist without propaganda.
An explanation for everything puts you in a position of privilege, all your opponents are demons, you're on a mission from God, and everything is purely explained.
I've said before that it usually takes years of it to demonize a group enough for the general public to see other human beings as such a threat that they should be put in camps.
What we're doing is we're providing a sanitary place for them to be detained. Remember, we're detaining murderers, we're detaining rapists, pedophiles, drug dealers, gun traffickers. I mean, we have some real serious criminals there. Plus, every one of them broke the law. That's why they're there to begin with.
The early 21st century has seen the rise of social media and digital worlds that are configured to relentlessly harvest our attention in ways that are difficult to break.
He'll say, look, Aunt Betty, you're a Christian. We're told to love migrants. And she'll say, well, I love immigrants. And I love Jesus' story in the Bible. They were immigrants, I know. But these immigrants are all criminals.
More reaction, less thinking, less verifiable information, and less real information come to us.
I'm a patriot. I would never support rioting, but all those people at January 6th, they were trying to stop pedophiles who stole the election.
When that is paired with propaganda, it leads directly to a concentration camp society, as we saw with the kind of campaigns on Facebook against the Rohingya in Myanmar.
For many in Myanmar, Facebook is the internet.
A new class action lawsuit accuses the social media platform of playing a direct role in a campaign of ethnic cleansing against the Rohingya.
At the core of this complaint is the realization that Facebook was willing to trade the lives of the Rohingya people for better market penetration in a small country in Southeast Asia.
Now, artificial intelligence.
We're joined by Karen Howe.
In the way that the oligarchs are pushing it and fooling people about it.
Author of the award-winning book Empire of AI, Dreams and Nightmares, and Sam Altman's AI.
Is poised to build the next world. A worse world, using the model inherited from political and corporate propagandists like Bernays and the compulsive attention-grabbing models of social media.
These really powerful tech billionaires have fused with the state and are trying to override what the people actually want. 80% of Americans in the latest polling are concerned about AI.
I'll take a moment to say that one of my kids is in an engineering program that involves a lot of computer work. And because of talking with him about all this and seeing what kind of work he does, I've got a glimpse of this other world where machine learning would have had a different existence as an extraordinary tool that could help a lot of scientific and tech projects. And that life as a tool appears to be taking place, but the field of AI itself has subsumed it.
You know, we're minting the first trillionaire in the world while simultaneously so many Americans are just trying to afford their basic life and trying to put food on the table for their kids. And in come these data centers.
The people developing and selling AI have tried to turn it into a creative mind, a companion, a romantic partner, and things it is entirely incapable of being or doing.
Their physical manifestation of this, because they consume an enormous amount of energy, they consume fresh water resources, they're hiking up people's utility prices and exacerbating that affordability crisis.
The propaganda they're pushing, and I mean it's literally propaganda, makes bigger and bigger claims for what artificial intelligence can do now, will be able to do in the future, and what it even is.
All in the name of producing a technology that is concentrating yet more wealth in the hands of those very same billionaires.
Like all propaganda, it depends on fear and relies on lies that cheat people and divide humanity.
One of the things that I think people misunderstand about these layoffs is they think that it indicates somehow AI is successfully replacing all of these workers. But
we're seeing the rise of AI psychosis.
But what's important to understand is these tech companies, they're trying to get cost efficiencies now, in part because they're spending an extraordinary amount of money trying to develop AI technologies.
Then there's the deluge of shitty AI music and books.
They're actually making a future bet that when they lay off the current human employees to gain current cost efficiencies, that they will hopefully then be able to automate them away later with AI.
But companies are now offering the false promise of AI companions who, if anything, will render you more unfit for the real friction of actual human encounters.
But it's not, in fact, a representation of what AI can currently do.
The useful tool, AI, for specific tech and scientific tasks wouldn't have been profitable enough to satisfy the men who own it. So a broader myth of AI is being sold to much of the public, and it's an illusion and a lie. You don't have to accept it. Now, I haven't forgotten about the Pope in all this.
Let us not sleep as others do, admonished the Apostle Paul, but let us keep awake.
I was baptized Catholic, became a Lutheran when my mother divorced and remarried, and during my early teenage years was swept by my mother's second husband into evangelical communities, but also briefly attended a Catholic junior high school. And then I wound up at a Jesuit university for my college years, which included some additional Catholic education. And as I said, I don't generally look to the church as my moral compass. I know it can produce a Father Coughlin, just as it can produce a Pope Leo, and I don't have any illusions about the relationships to power you have to engage with to be a pope. But I think Pope Leo is right to be concerned about artificial intelligence in its current form. And it goes back to the propaganda.I, the propagation of the faith. Propaganda aims to bend free thought and will into service. That service typically limits someone's well-being or rights and obscures the harm done. An AI that explains the world to you in an overarching way that is designed to be a companion that flatters you is part of a propaganda mindset. It is being sold more heavily than anything in my lifetime. And there's a reason for that. Just as with propaganda, people want control of you for their own ends.
In the middle of all these sort of ideologies, there's usually a huge contradiction.
These are bad actors.
They're doing everything to push away the contradictory nature of these worldviews and pushing away the complexity of reality.
And so I want to think about the larger degree to which people are ceding control and understanding of their world to others and things that don't have their best interests at heart.
He knows that just like hammering and hammering and hammering that this is a lie, that this is untrue, won't work.
I wrote a couple weeks ago that I don't want to treat machines like people and people like machines.
All his work is getting people comfortable with reality again.
So it's important to be aware of what tools you're going to use and whose tool you might unwittingly become when you try to make people into things that serve you instead of human beings.
He takes them to local community to meet real immigrants. He changes their diet so they watch less of the national news and do more local news. They read books together. It's a very kind of individualized process.
One thing about propaganda, whether it's over AI or immigration, it requires tremendous resources and it exacts a cost.
I don't think it was very high.
It damages the people who accept it and even the people who use it and even the environment.
But he said something which I thought was a good credo to live by, which is that at least he himself has been true to himself.
These power holders weaken themselves, however, by coming to believe their own lies, and they underestimate their opposition.
Because usually when we meet somebody like that, we either try to sort of convince them, fail, and then we just talk about sports or cookies or neutral things. And that's dealing with the situation.
So ground yourself in a political or philosophical or theological heritage with some real teeth to it, and use that to weigh the actual facts on the ground, not to explain them away.
And he's like, no, I've lived by my values. I haven't given up on what I believe in. And I've tried to get them to this point where they can embrace complexity.
How then do we plan for that other world, that world not built on false promises, fear, and deception?
Can you finally, Karen Howe, in this last 30 seconds, talk more about the AI resist list?
I would say don't demonize your political opponents in the way that they demonize trans folks or immigrants or other groups.
This is a project that I did with a group of journalists, critical scholars, and AI researchers documenting resistance movements around the world.
If you judge them and hold them in contempt, do it for specific things those people have done and not for a category that you can throw them into.
It is meant to center hope.
Don't let this all get abstracted into some vague categories of bad people.
It is meant to center action.
These are real people doing specific things. Don't fall into a propaganda mindset by letting everything seem abstract and inevitable.
And it shows all the different creative ways that anyone can actually participate in applying pressure to the AI industry, holding it accountable, and in fact, shaping the trajectory of this technology.
And don't focus only on crises either, on the events that you find dangerous or troubling. Create community over the parts of the world that you like and the kind of connections you want to last, whether that's a book club or a sports rec league or even church if you're more devout than I am. A focus on building something positive is incredibly useful.
I want to bring into the conversation consumer advocate Erin Brockovich. She launched a new public tracking website where residents can report concerns about data centers in their own communities.
If you're active in the political realm, it's worth asking whether a strategy relies on fooling people, or does it actively embrace the world you want in a way that will make sense to the people that strategy is directed at?
I decided to create a map where people could self-report who were living in and around these facilities, what was going on in their own backyard.
Inviting them to be a part of that world that you want to build.
I was shocked to see within 3 days that 49 states were all reporting the exact same issues.
I think that's the key difference between politicians who are clearly able to talk about and address our current crisis of democracy.
The local level, non-disclosures, they weren't included. There wasn't a seat at the table. And how did this happen?
Whether it's about ICE detention, the war in Iran, or about AI, or any of a number of other deeply disturbing propaganda phenomena underway right now, it has become extraordinary to simply say what is unfolding around us.
2, for people that are already in the areas that are up and running with data centers, is the rise in electric bills.
So say what you see happening and share it with those around you and in your community, at school board meetings and city council meetings.
And everyone has the same concern about what about the water? What about the loss of land? Noise is a big issue in the ones that are running and affecting people. What's going to happen to the wildlife?
Make concrete details and plans to do something about it, rather than staying in the realm of ideas. It can be something small. Anyone can do it.
Listen, these people aren't being heard. They aren't being seen in their own backyard, and they deserve to know what's happening. And I think shutting them out of that conversation is one of the biggest problems of all.
The 10-year-old girl outside the Delaney Hall ICE concentration camp in Newark, on the 4th day of the hunger strike, did it beautifully over the weekend by going to visit her father and telling reporters outside exactly what was happening.
What were you yelling at the guards?
That they need to let all these people out. If they're such big and bad, why don't they just take their mask off? They want to work here. They want to work here. They want to work here. So let them show their face. They should show their face. They want to work here? Then show your face. Why are you so scared? Why? There's nothing to be scared of. We're all here. We're all here to just see our family members. We're not here for trouble. We're not here for nothing. We're just here to just see our family members.
She witnessed the larger events unfolding. She went to offer relief from suffering, or barring that, to testify about it. Saying what's happening in a literal way is an anchoring practice and a radical act of anti-propaganda. We should all be doing more of it. And that's it.
Thanks for listening to Next Comes What. Please share this with one person who's looking for ways to survive this mess. To support this podcast, please become a paid subscriber at AndreaPitzer.com and consider giving Next Comes What a 5-star review where you get your podcasts.